Thank you, Joseph, for making us cry this morning. That was very moving. Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting. We go to Ukraine to check in with Joseph Lindsley. Joe, I'm looking at some listener texts after your report from the train Friday. Joseph's report brought to mind Iggy Pop's song, Real Wild Child. I imagine that that the song's energy matches that of the Ukrainian resistance. And another one. Wow, what a broadcast and history lesson from Joseph on Friday. Thank you and your producers for all you do to bring this to us. And also a Happy New Year, Rosh Hashanah message from that listener. How are you, Joe? What's going on today?
Hey, Bob. Well, good afternoon from Kharkiv. Currently under air alarm, probably the third or fourth or fifth, who knows, today. But perhaps we should play that Iggy Pop song tomorrow. I can't think of it, but I'm interested to hear it. And indeed, it is a wild spirit. When I was on the train traveling across the country, as I've mentioned, that is a time to reflect on everything that's happened. You don't have cell service, so you're really kind of protected from the information. And here in Kharkiv, I used to call this city the edge of the free world because it's only 30 miles or so from Russia, from Mordor. And the missiles, as happened this weekend, arrive here before the air alarms even sound. But now, after I've been here so many times, I think of Kharkiv as the center of the free world. You have so many Ukrainians and foreigners here working for victory in a very intense way because they're so close to the edge. And I'd say it was a very consequential weekend here. Our team traveled on a multi-purpose mission. One, we were delivering a drone that was purchased with the help of the good people of Chicago, people who listen and are listening to right now to WGN. That was led by volunteer Jim Gamache, and who's here now in Kharkiv from Aurora. And also that was made possible, the purchase of that drone was made possible by the community of the Ukrainian Catholic University, an effort led by Ukrainian Anton Hutryak. And so together we had this international alliance that traveled by train here to Kharkiv, and half of our team on Saturday morning went to deliver the drone to the soldiers. That story is a pretty interesting story and kind of hilarious, but I might have to save that until tomorrow because of the other things that happened. The other half of our team, which I was on, we traveled south of Kharkiv to a little village. We were on a reporting mission to a village that has been, it was under Russian occupation for a long time, and there's a lot of rebuilding going on there. So as we were leaving, we left Kharkiv, beautiful, crisp, 70-degree day. And about 30 minutes after we were outside of the city, we had reports that the Russians were attacking Kharkiv city. In fact, they hit a building that we had just passed 30 minutes prior. And it was a pretty massive attack, at least 4 of those Iskander missiles. And meanwhile, we're driving through this absolutely beautiful green and brown and black rolling fields. The land here is incredibly fertile. And we reached a small village down a rustic road. There's no cell service. I'm trying to reach our local partners to get in touch. And so we're stopped on this sort of dirt road. And in the distance, you can hear the sounds of war. You can hear the constant shelling. At the point where we stopped, it was unshaded, just fields, no trees. There was a roadside cross, perhaps 100 years old. And you sort of feel like a sitting duck just standing there. We're waiting to find some way to contact our local team. And besides the sound of the shelling in the distance, there's an eerie silence. I mean, just totally silent. It was such a surreal feeling, like something out of a Cormac McCarthy story. And then in the distance, a car approached, and with a local man and woman were driving. And our driver, Bodan, explained in Ukrainian who we were looking for. And so then we go into this village, and the village is sort of woven within spinneys of trees in the middle of this very fertile series of fields. And as we're driving through you can just, everywhere you look, there's just absolutely rich vegetation. But underneath the vegetation are the ruins of so many houses and buildings. And as we're driving through this village, it becomes apparent that every single house and building was destroyed. And this is just a little village, maybe with 600 people. And the Russians had pounded every single bit of it. And there were four houses, each with a little story. The first house we arrive at, as we're still looking for our friends, there were a bunch of maybe about a half dozen older men that were working to rebuild this house. And they were astounded to have Americans show up to greet them at this very out of the way place. And they all were helping a childhood friend repair his house. And so we saw the sense of community. And then they told us where our friends were. So we went down the road, and I saw my friend Max Burtsev. He's an entrepreneur from Kharkiv. In fact, here in Kharkiv, he's got a sandwich shop that has great Reubens called Cowabunga. And he also has a digital strategy agency. But in the wartime, he created a volunteer group called Volontarska UA. And actually, among their work, they buy drones, which, with the help of WG and listeners, they had just purchased a strike drone to use in battle. But their other project is to rebuild houses, especially before the winter, to get roofs on houses so that so everything is not totally lost. And Max's and his team, their mission is to go to the places that no one talks about. Nearby is the little city of Izum, and that's become a popular place for volunteers. But this little village was ignored, and so they were there to help. And Max introduced me to they were working on a house right there, and the house had actually been totally destroyed, but they were rebuilding the garage so the family could live at least in some kind of shelter. And behind the house and the garage, there was a beautiful black patch of earth. And Max explained to me that Luda, the homeowner, while most of her family's at the front lines, she and her neighbors demined that garden themselves. They never had sapper training. They never had, they probably just looked up YouTube videos on how to demine because all the fields beyond, you can't go there. It's it's a wasteland of landmines. But she demined her little garden, and they sell, with Max's help, they sell those vegetables to restaurants in Kharkiv, including a restaurant where I ate last night. And sorry, I hear sounds in the background, so I'm not sure what's happening. Anyway, but I think we're okay here. And then we go to the next house, and it's the home of a woman named Irina. And the house, you could tell she had painted beautiful flowers on the brick walls, but now they're pockmarked with the wounds from artillery. And Max said, he said, I don't want to depress Irina. I want to show you something. And he took us to the backyard, and there was a grave, and the grave was covered with flowers that kind of looked like the flowers that had been painted on the walls. And that was the grave of one of Irina's 5 sons. She had evacuated before the full-scale invasion, but one of her sons was there. And when she returned after the liberation, she found the remains of his body. Absolutely awful. Her son named Roman. And so there was no system, there was no authorities to help take care of, so she had to bury her son on her own in that land. And as she says, we are not afraid because we have Volya, and Volya is that Ukrainian word, that will to freedom. And so even as she's going through this hell and talking to me about her son, which she did, she was smiling. When she spoke about freedom, she was laughing. And I think we'll have to share the rest of these stories in the coming days. But what I saw, massive missiles to artillery shells, the Russians used everything against this one tiny village, regular people, and people who are still there and rebuilding, even with smiles, despite the hell that they have gone through.
So important to hear those small stories that you tell, because that really puts in perspective the huge story of what's going on over there. Joseph, mind those alarms, please, and we'll let you go and hope to
Bob,
talk to you tomorrow.
by the way, when I returned to Kharkiv, we got hit twice that day, which was extraordinary, in the morning and in the evening, and I'll tell you about that tomorrow.
Yeah, and I know overnight there was an attack on Kherson in the southern region, and then this morning on Odessa. So be careful, and
thank you, Bob.
Talk on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що він сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні,
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
на чиїй ти стороні.
Єбать.